So, could I have turned out to be a bitter hellion who wanted nothing but revenge? Yeah, I could have. But what would that have done for me? Other than possibly got me locked up. And I won't even say possibly, most certainly got me locked up. Like, what would that have done for me? So instead I opted to deal with it head on and move on from it. You know, I also understand that we all deal with our issues and our pain differently. My brother did not deal with the situation the same way I dealt with it. My brother was raised by my grandmother. So up until I was 10, with the exception of when we were younger, from when I was born up until I was about maybe 3 or 4, somewhere up in there, there is a gap in there where me and my brother did not live in the same house. We didn't even live in the same state. And that's because I was being raised by my mother and my older brother was being raised by my grandmother. Um, and my brother, even before his passing, still never got over that. And no matter how much I tried to talk to him about this was the reason why this happened, and this is the situation that they were in. And at the time, my mother was young. And when my mom decided to move, my grandmother panicked because she didn't want to let my brother go. So she went into panic mode. And because of conditions that my mom has dealt with as far as mental illness is concerned, it was easy to talk her into certain things. So my grandmother basically guilted my mother into leaving my brother, um, knowing that she could pull that off. Now I love my grandmother, don't get it twisted, don't talk about my family. But at the time, I think everybody was working from a place of fear. And that's why in the beginning of this I said, even with what's going on now, never come from a place of fear, because you're going to do something stupid. Like, don't come from a place of fear. Anytime you work from a place of fear, you're going to do something that you're ultimately going to regret. Um, so I believe at that time, my grandmother was just working from a place of fear. She was older, she was starting to lose her eyesight, and she was afraid that, if my mom was gone and my uncles, my mother's older brothers, they were much older, they had families of their own, she was going to be on her own. Like, I believe she was honestly working from a place of fear, and therefore she did what she did. So when my mom came back to get my brother to bring him back to live with us, he only stayed for a short period of time, and my grandmother really had a hard time. And this is how this was set up. So they would visit back and forth, but he stayed with my grandmother and I stayed with my mother. Um, Now, there are several things in that situation that could have been different. There are several things in that situation that, they could have sat down and said, you know what, this is my child and he needs to be here, but in the summers the kids can come and stay with you, and then through the school year they come back here. Like, there's 1,001 ways that they could have sat down and worked this out, but it didn't happen that way. It happened the way it was supposed to. And I will go to my grave believing that the things that I've been through and the things that my brother went through and the things that my family went through, it happened the way it happened because it was supposed to. Because there was something in there for us to learn. The problem is that whereas some of us learned from the situations we were in, some of us didn't. My brother took it on differently, and therefore he acted out because of how he took it. So he really felt it hardcore as an abandonment, and he could never let it go. And no matter how much we explained to him, listen, this is the reason why this happened, it was too hurtful for him and he could not let it go. And then I finally even explained to him once, I said, listen, and there's no shade to him, because anybody who knows my brother, he was the sweetest person you never want to meet, but he was also the one person you never wanted to cross, because sweet can go away real fast. But as a child, dealing with everything that I dealt with coming up with my mom, I do not believe that my brother would have been okay living the life that I lived, between me having to be a latchkey kid when I was like 7, um, crossing a busy street going to school, letting myself in and out the house, you know, and doing that by myself. Now, maybe we would have done better if we were doing it together, but I just don't feel as though it would have been something that he would have at that age been okay with at that age, because he started off with my grandmother. So he started off differently. And then, mind you, I started off differently because I started off with both my parents. But I kind of came up more with back and forth rockiness, whereas my brother's situation was a lot more solid for several years. So I just don't feel as though he would have dealt with the situation the same way I did, because I was used to rocky situations. Like, I was used to the back and forth, and today was a great day, but next week maybe not so much. So I don't believe he would have dealt with it very well. And then, as everybody knows, we went through several years where my mother dealt with addiction, and I had to deal with that with her. And I honestly do not believe that he would have dealt with that portion of her life very well at all. And because he didn't deal with the position he was put in with staying with my grandmother that well, he occasionally would come at my mom out of left field, which I didn't appreciate, because I understand you being upset and you being hurt. But at the same time, like I told him, there are several bullets that you dodged. And I realized that the reason why I was the child who was in the situation and not him is because of exactly what happened as we got older. He was the one who wanted to hold the grudge, even though he didn't deal with it the way I did. And I was the one who was like, you know what, it is what it is, and we have to move on and let it go. So I think he would have been worse off if he was actually in the situation with her. Whereas, not saying it was just a great place for me to be, but I think I was able to handle it a lot better. And I talked to my mother about this once, and my mom was like, you know, you never know. He may have been thrown into the situation and rose to the occasion. But at the same time, I just deep down don't feel as though it would have been the best for him. So where he was at was actually the best for him. Now, I hate the fact that although he absolutely loved my mother, and before he passed away, and a lot of people don't realize this, he actually came up and saw my mom. And he came and did as usual. He got in her bed, went to sleep, you know, took care of some stuff that she needed taken care of, sat there, talked to her, poured his heart out, and he went on about his business. And I can't say how, it was somewhere within that month before he passed away. But I know that he absolutely did love his mother. And he had told close friends he was just trying to figure out how to even deal with it, because for some reason it was still, even in his 40s, it was still coming at him. Like, he could not seem to get past that. And he was a little kid, but he just couldn't seem to get past it. And it took me a long time, because at first, when he would say things about, you know, I'm just upset because mommy left me, I would actually get mad, because I'm like, considering everything that I've been through, the last thing that you can say to me is you're upset about not having to be there to live through what I lived through. So I actually took it a different kind of way, and would get upset with him for him even being upset that he was raised with his grandmother. So we both had things that we had to get over because of that situation. And like I said, I got to a point where I started understanding his side of it. I understood my mother's side of it. You know, I understood my father's side of it. Like, I understood where everybody was coming from, and was just like, okay, this is what it is. And now we move on. It wasn't like that for everybody else involved. And I really wish he had had the opportunity to really just scream, holler, and get that out. And although he's said some things to my mom, he's never just flat out sat down and said, listen, this is what my issue was with you, and really talked it out, because I don't think he really wanted to come at her like that. And he probably should have. And I'm not saying, for people who are listening to me, as soon as you get finished listening to this podcast, you're going to go find everybody who wronged you and just start going ham on folks. Like, that's not what I mean. If you can sit down and have an adult conversation with the people who have done you wrong, and in this case, I'm talking solely about parents. If you can sit down and have an adult conversation with your parents and say, listen, this is how I felt about what you did. This is how I felt. I was a kid. I was a child. You know, the decisions were in your hands, and this is how I felt about it. And, you know, remain respectful of the situation and just sit down and get your side out and just get it out. and leave it there. And then I would say go ahead and have those conversations, because until you let it go and leave it there, you're going to continue to carry it with you. And that's just truth. And a lot of people say, well, no, I just left it on. I'm fine. You say that. And I know what I'm talking about, because I'm the queen of, nah, I'm good. To the point where I actually forgot at least 65% of my own childhood, like completely forgot. Um, but I think the I'm good is just being put out in the air to make you feel like it's one of those, if I keep saying it long enough, I'll start to believe it. And if I start to believe it, then I'll actually start to live it. And that works in some situations, but when it comes to things like this, not so much. You really have to just make it known. And like I said, don't walk into the situation expecting somebody to tell you, oh, well, I'm sorry that I did this. Just walk into it knowing that you can get that off your chest, and then move forward with a better relationship with that person if that is what you want. Me and my parents, we cool. Me and my mom are good. You've heard me say on this podcast before, I don't care what I tell you on here, don't come from my mama, because I don't play about that. Like, me and my mom are great. And I understand now as an adult with my own children the reason why certain decisions were made. Do I feel as though something better could have been done? Most certainly. But is there anything I can do about it now? Absolutely not. Because what's done is done. Situation is over and done with. I'm in my mid-40s. I'm pushing 50. So whatever happened, happened. It's over and done with. We've lived through it, and we survived it, and we go on. And I'm telling you all of this, like I said in the beginning, to let you know, again, there's no rule, but there's no handbook to being a parent. Now, you know what it means to be a good person. You know what it means to take care of another person, hopefully. But there's no guide to tell you, okay, yes, when they come home from school and they tell you this, you do this. Works every time. No. Because as I stated, I am the person I am because of the people who raised me. My children are who my children are because, of course, they have parts of me in them. They have parts of their father in them. And then anybody else they've come in contact with as they've come up that has played a significant role in their lives, they have pulled from each one of us. And now they are who they are. And now that both of my children are are 21 and older, like, they're adults. So where they are in their lives now and the people that they are now, that's a combination of everything that has happened to them, every person that has come into their lives. And it's a whole different ballgame when those babies that you raising right now become adults. Because now they can really sit down and tell you, listen, this is what I felt. And I mean, if they come at you and they tell you that they feel like you screwed up, you take it and you go on. Okay. That is exactly how you feel. Because you know you were doing, hopefully, you know you were doing the best that you could. Like I said, there are some parents out there who are questionable. But I'm not talking about them right now. You done the best that you could. You did what you knew to do. You did what you felt was right. And other than that, all you can do is sit and take it if they decide to come at you and say, listen, here is my issue with you. I have 2 children, one of whom has, for the most part, no problem with me or who I am as a person. And one who has an absolute problem with me and who I am as a person. They both love me, though. And they both know that I'm here for them and I got them. But one of them was okay with me and the other one was not. One of them thinks there could have been more discipline. One of them is I think it was too much. Like, and under the same roof, always. They've never been separated. So that's what I mean by you could raise 7 kids in the same house with the same parents and the same rules, and it's going to turn out different for each one because their personalities are different. So you almost have to parent a child for where they are. But when they're younger, you don't know who they're going to turn into. You're just, like I said, you're winging it. And as they get older and their influences are different, their friends are different, and this one's friends are different, each child is going to come at you differently because each